The purpose of this tutorial is to go over the color replacement tool and the options associated with it. To begin, I've opened an image that I would like to change the color. With the color replacement tool, it's not necessarily about just painting a solid color over top of everything. It's more about painting with the foreground color, which is the color swatch that you see on the top. That's always going to be your foreground color, without painting over the image detail. So you'll still be able to see the variation between lights and darks within the colors that you're trying to change. So to begin, I've gone over, normally you'll see the brush tool, and I've switched to color replacement tool. You'll see a circle with a plus in the middle of it. That defines your brush size. Your brush size can be changed in the upper left-hand corner of the options bar. You can do it this way. You could also use the bracket keys, which are located down on your QWERTY keyboard up near the backspace. So if you use the right bracket, you'll notice that my brush increases in size, and if you use the left bracket, it decreases. For doing small areas, I would suggest that you use a smaller brush tool to get into these sorts of areas. And then when just trying to cover a blanket area or a larger area, you switch over to a larger brush tool. The very first option that we're going to look at is continuous sampling. Continuous means that it replaces all of the colors with the foreground color. So let's see what that looks like. Right now, by the way, I have this set to fine edges. For this image, it doesn't really matter too much. If we were to change the options around, this option, the discontiguous, means that it's over the entire image that we could paint, minus the areas that don't have any values in it, which would be white. Versus the contiguous areas, which are all only the adjacent areas that you're trying to paint. But we can go more into that in a later video. Tolerance refers to the tool's sensitivity, which means that you can define what the limits are, what the color range is. So you could say if there was a low tolerance, you might only choose, say, this pink right here. And you only want to get pinks that are very close or similar to this very light pink in this one spot. However, if you increase the tolerance to, say, 51%, then it's going to choose not only that very light pink, but all of the pinks that are very similar to it, or even not so similar, especially if you continue to increase the tolerance. I found that somewhere in the 30s range works best for me. Okay, so let's change the color of this dress. I'm going to decrease my size and simply change the color of the dress. This would color the area outside of the dress. If I was to go over top of, say, the hair or the arm, it would not change the color of white because there is no value there, and therefore it cannot change color. I'm going to Control Z so that you can see that we can use a couple of different ways to color. The next option besides the continuous sampling would be sampling once. In theory, you would sample one color, one area, and then it shouldn't go into the other area. However, sometimes, well, Photoshop is not flawless and it doesn't always work that well. So you can see it's still sort of sampled the skin tones, but it's mainly sticking to that color that was used in the dress. And you can see it's even confusing here for the really dark reds, so you would have to click on those to go over top of and sample those. So you would have to click and drag over to get all of the pinks that you wanted, but it shouldn't go into the other areas. Notice that it is confusing it here. You could decrease the tolerance here to change that. The very last one would be choosing a color, putting it in the background. Now this one's a little bit harder to understand. So you need to choose the color that you want to get rid of first with the eyedropper tool. And the eyedropper tool just basically goes in and selects any color. Let's say that it looks like this is the closest color for it's not really the lightest color, it's not really the darkest color, it's my medium. Now that I've chosen with the eyedropper tool, I go back to my color replacement brush, and I can now swap the background color. So I click this button right here, and I could change the color. Now right now it's set to a very similar color, so that could be really confusing. Let's just switch it here to something that's not even remotely close. There. So having your background, choosing the background swatch method, you need to have your color that you're changing in the background tab, in the background swatch. This foreground color is the color that we'll be changing to. So we have it here. This all looks good. The tolerance we may need to increase a little bit on this one, but let's see how we do. Notice that we're changing the color of the pink. It shouldn't be changing any colors of other things, only the colors of the pink. This is most useful for things when changing where there's like harder areas to get into, especially like those little cracks, where the hair is overlapping. So that should work that way. Now, notice that the lips are very similar in color, and therefore they would be changed too, because it's similar to the color that we're trying to get rid of. So that is how you use the 3 color replacement tools in the case of replacing color in an image where you do not want to change any of the values or details.